Welcome to the Garden Like a Guru Show, and I'm your host, Tyhson Banighen, a permaculture instructor, and I'm here with the co-host, the one and only, lovely garden guru herself, Sarah Bradshaw. We got lots to talk about today. We're talking about herbs and how to use them, how to grow them, how to harvest them, how to take care of them. But first of all, I think we're going to look at what's up energetically as far as taking care of your garden from a biodynamic perspective.
You got it. Yeah. Well, here we are into July. I was hoping for a summer, but we're here in BC, we're already getting a bit of a fire season. So be aware of that. Pray for rain. Put out all sorts of water energy. We need the rain. We need the water. It's super important. So yeah, I'm hoping for lots more wet stuff out of the clouds for sure.
Yeah, it's hot.
Yeah, and we're in the fourth quarter, so between the heat and the lack of humidity and the moon phases, not much is going to be going on in the way of planting this week. Good time for harvesting though. Strawberries are in some places pretty much done. So if you haven't gotten your strawberries in, you might want to really focus on that. Cherries, for some people like you, Tyhson, yours are, if they aren't picked, the birds are getting them. Am I right?
Well, we've just got a couple more days to go. We're actually in pretty good shape, believe it or not, that we did really well. No worms, which was amazing. And somehow it looks like the rain didn't really damage them. And so, we've been blessed this year with our cherries.
Well, I'm glad. Yeah, I figure you should get a couple of 100 pounds off of that tree that you've got there.
We're way up there now, I think.
Yeah. It's amazing how much fruit a tree can really crank out. It really is very, very astounding. So a really good time to harvest. We're already moving into Gemini this afternoon. So we're into Gemini all today, the rest of today, all day tomorrow, and well into Wednesday. We go void, of course, late in the day on Wednesday, but stay in Gemini, and we don't actually move into Cancer until Thursday, which puts us in Cancer on Friday as well, which is when we move into the new moon. So if you're at that point where you're looking at your garden and, that whatchamacallit died, those didn't quite come up and fill in the way you thought they were going to, and you're not sure what happened there, but it's a bare spot. This is a good little window here to grab whatever might be available to you at local garden centers. Not very much would really do well from seed at this time of year. Of course, your successional plantings of lettuces and greens you want to do. But if you want to put something in the ground to fill in a space or take care of a fabulous bargain that you got at that 80% off sale at the garden center because they're getting desperate to get rid of them. That Friday, Saturday window is ideal. The moon has gone new on Friday afternoon. It's in Cancer. It's just a real good, nice little opportunity. And those are few and far between as we move into July. It's actually very difficult to wrap your head around planting much of anything at this time. This is the stage of the year where you're likely to lose those new cuttings, that new rows that you planted, that young fruit tree or bush that you got in. I cannot stress enough that from here until September, those bigger transplants need a lot of water.
Yeah, natural we sort of got caught with overwatering them and ended up with mold. So we're down to about, I think, 3. So you have to be careful. somewhere in the
And
house.
not so much your garden plants, like things like melons and
Yeah.
that they like water, but they like to dry out. But if you've planted anything that was a plant,
Yeah, or
like if you
cuttings or
planted
anything
a
like
rose, your cuttings,
that.
keep an eye on them. Make sure they do not dry out. And if you planted anything like a young fruit tree or a young shrub, I was about 16 when I got my first actual job at a garden center. And it was way up at the top end of Lakeshore Drive in Salmon Arm, up where Lakeshore meets 60th. And if you go any further, you're going down into Canoe. And they had a live tree guarantee. And what the guarantee was that if you bought a tree from Chris Young and you planted it and followed instructions, if it was dead the following spring, you could bring it back and you would get your money back or a replacement tree, your choice. And when we sold people trees, and he took such pains to educate me about this, how we've got the green liquid that's 5 drops in 3 gallons of water, and the red, which is 3 drops in 5 gallons of water. And you give green on one day, and on day 2, you do red. And if people came in and they ran out of their little tree food, well, a supplement, I was just to simply refill it for them, absolutely no charge on refilling the food supplements for the tree. We want you to use it up. We want you to make sure. And to get your tree money back or your tree replaced, you have to bring in your bottles of supplement that you had been given and show how much of it you had used, and your little chart that showed when you had watered, and if you had been diligent and you kept it up in that and your tree died, you got your money back.
Wow, what a deal.
Oh, yeah, it was great. So the second year that I was working there, Chris taught me the secret of the green food and the red food, both of which were simply food coloring diluted and put in a bottle. And I was like, what? And he said they need to water the tree. If they give the tree 3 gallons of water on day 1 and 5 gallons on day 2, and they do that all summer long, even if they miss a day or 2 here or there or a week or 2, the colored water is just to keep them honest, keep them mixing it up and, making sure. And he said not many people have the moxie to, come back and ask for their tree back if they haven't even touched the bottles of supplement and that. And I laughed, but I also learned, I learned something about human psychology, but I also learned how incredibly important it is in that first year, if you plant in the spring, to never let that tree or shrub dry out.
Right.
Yeah. And this is the time of year that it's most likely to start happening. You planted it, maybe it even flowered for you. It looked good, it seems good. Yeah, it's all good. But no, they really need the water. And it's actually one of the reasons I highly, highly recommend planting in the fall and watering them in well, because then by the time they hit the dry spell of the summer, they've had the fall to begin to put out their rootlets. They've had all winter long for that root ball to absorb all sorts of moisture. They've had a long, slow thaw and all the spring moisture. By the time they get here, they've got some resources. Now, they'll still benefit from regular watering, even under those cases, but they will do far, far better than your spring plantings. So this is the time of year you got to be really conscious of those spring plantings.
What a frustration. You come all this way doing it and then you lose it. So you really want to stay on top of it, right?
And, I see that often.
Yeah.
I see that often. I have a friend in northern Alberta who grows and sells trees, and he went through a period in his life in his late 60s where he stopped selling trees to people because they wouldn't water them and keep them alive. And he's like, I kept that thing alive in a pot for 4 years, and you let it die in a summer, you know. He sold something like 700 trees to a golf course that was going in. And the golf course owner came back to me the next spring and said, your friend Jerry is completely insane. I went to replace all the trees that I let die, and he swore at me and told me he wouldn't sell me another damn tree as long as I lived. I mean, what's it to him? He was going to make more money. And I was like, what's it to him is that many of those trees he had kept alive for 7 or 8 years. And through not bothering to water, they died.
Right.
Yeah. And you know, it's right. When you said heartbreaking, you hit the nail right on the head. Right. It is heartbreaking. So keep an eye on those larger plantings that you did. You're not likely to forget to water your garden. Your lettuce looks wilty, you're going to notice. You know, that the bean leaves start drying out, you're going to notice. But you might not notice the tree and bush until it's way too late. So then we, like I said, we have a new moon coming up on Friday. That puts us into the full summer moon. This moon cycle will take us right into August. So it will be encompassing that first little bit of August, which are the, sometimes it's called Lammas, but it's in Celtic, it's Lunasa. It's the sun god festival. It's warm enough to sleep outside. It was the one festival usually in Great Britain that people were pretty much guaranteed they could party all night outside and not get rained on. And it's the start of what we refer to as the dog days of summer, and they are the hottest days. So this is our full summer moon. This is our hot moon, the corn moon. You know, this is where our gardens are really going to ripen. So you'll be prepared for that. Think about what you're going to be doing to get your garden through those dog days of summer. Make sure you got, you know, your mulch all in order, that you've got water lined up. If you've overplanted your garden or its needs are going to exceed your water capability, this is the time of year you'll start getting a real inkling for that. So you've got time to kind of get on top of it and make sure that your garden doesn't completely toasty dry out on you.
Wow. Yeah, a lot to think about. Water, and more water, right?
Yeah. You know, gardens are a year-round adventure. When people talk about gardening season, I kind of go,
yeah.
I'm actually working on a journal, not just an annual day book, but an actual perpetual garden journal, where there will be like activities and things outlined for each month, so that when you're in January, you know, what should I be aware of? What should I be ordering? What should I be starting in seeds? What should I be getting going? In February, you know, what needs to be taken into account in that second moon cycle, all the way through. So it'll be a combination of practical information and what I hope is some real inspiration for people enjoying and making the most of their gardens.
Yeah, that sounds wonderful. Yeah. And that's what's so important about being able to join us here on the show, is that you can, subscribe to the Inner Garden Circle and the Garden Circle and get the whole video course for the whole year and use it year after year after year, right from choosing the seeds, open pollinated, all the way to their purchase, how to take care of them.
You can go back and rewatch and make sure you understand that technique, and make sure that you've got it all accurate. And we held a little bit of a contest a while ago where we invited people to send us pictures and let us know what was going on in their garden, and we would reward them with some seeds. Well, one of our members, she's relocated from the interior down to the Agassiz area in BC, which is a very lush area, and she's part of our inner garden circle. So we did a little bit of consulting on her yard, and she's in a community that is quite tightly controlled, as a lot of people find, strata regulations, subdivisions can have what they call restrictive covenants. You can be restricted about what color you can paint your house, what kind of hedging you can use and that. And her yard is blessed with one of the most ugly cedar hedge fences I've seen, and she has the double misfortune of having to actually live with it. So we did some brainstorming about what she might be able to do, and I'm hoping we can load that picture up and let people take a look at what a little bit of consultation and taking a look at a problem situation and figuring it out with a little bit of consultation can actually do to improve the sightliness of your yard and your own personal enjoyment of it.
So maybe you could describe some of the things that she did.
Is Michael going to put up? Oh, the photo's up. Oh, okay. Sorry, I'm not seeing the same thing other people are seeing necessarily. Okay, so what is here is this is, she's not allowed to remove this cedar hedge because of the regulations of the park community that she lives in. But you can see through, using the shepherd hooks and the hangers, how she's completely altered the look of that whole scope there. She's got color, she's taking really good advantage of the light there. She's drawing the eye to that side of the yard. Really, adds a lot of interest, and these kind of plantings that she chose are going to do quite well in that rather exposed and, somewhat inhospitable environment. If you can do automatic watering, these kind of things do extremely well. My quick fix for automatic watering in planters like this is before I plant the pot full of the flowers, I take a water bottle and pierce it with a fairly coarse, like leather sort of sewing needle, so it leaves a dozen or so fair-sized holes in the bottle, and put the dirt all around it, leaving the neck of the bottle exposed in the center of the basket. And that way I can put, an entire cup or two of water into the basket, and it will slowly seep into the soil. Baskets tend to dry out rather quickly, but at any rate, I hope that gives people a little bit of inspiration, and they get a chance to admire the wonderful handwork there of Lois and what she's done with, like I said, it's a vastly improved scenario from what she was dealing with.
Yeah, baskets are a bit tricky, aren't they? As far as watering is concerned, you really have to keep keep in touch with that basket, right?
Yeah, you do. Another trick that works really, really well, especially if the baskets are on the deck or close to the house, is, and this is one I learned from my mother when she moved into an apartment building and was reduced to balcony gardening instead of her usual garden, ice cubes. Putting 2 or 3 ice cubes in a hanging basket is a good way to water them over the course of the day, because the ice has to first melt and then it will slowly seep in. And that gives it a chance for the thing with the basket is the water so often evaporates right out, and that's where the ice really can work.
Don't forget, that's what you need to do to water your orchids too, is use ice cubes, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And for larger baskets, I actually freeze ice in muffin tins.
Oh,
So instead of a little ice cube, I have a muffin tin sized cube, which is what, about 3 to 4 ounces of water. And I put that in the basket, and it takes a while to melt, and it doesn't evaporate as rapidly. And
great idea. I never
yeah.
thought that's wonderful.
Oh yeah, lots of cheap tricks. You know, you don't have to spend a fortune to be a good gardener.
Magic garden tricks.
Yeah. So, as I said, oh, okay. Thank her. Thank you, Lois, for sharing your beautiful, beautiful yard with us.
Yes, thank you very much.
Yeah, it really is an inspiration, and I'm so glad to pass it on to other people. You know, it can be a real frustration to move into a new place and try and figure out what to do and how to make it work and not waste a lot of time and money. And that's where, you know, being in the garden inner circle can really save you some coin and time, because you can spend that time consulting and getting the answers right.
Yeah, I know it's going to come for a visit, which is the other thing that once you can do is if you're in the neighborhood, if you're anywhere near the shoe shop in the Okanagan, you can always come for a visit in the demonstration garden and see what's happening.
Indeed.
Right now, you can come and check out the fact that the sneaky little bulbs are just leaving the top of the carrot. Yeah. Yeah, so the voles are doing very well. They're enjoying the garden immensely.
Okay. Okay, we need a Jack Russell Terrier.
Yeah, well, there won't be anything left in the garden, but I'm thinking of a couple of feral cats, but yes.
Yeah, check with the SPCA. Last I heard, they had a feral cat problem in Salmon Arm. And I know my aunt got 2 or 3 barn cats that were feral cats that they had rounded up from the fairgrounds in her hometown and had spayed and neutered them and gave them to farmers who needed them. And it was the perfect solution, you know, cats, but no kittens.
Right, cats, but no kittens, yeah.
So, as we were talking about, you know, this is a great harvest week. Here we are, first part of July, summer's getting hot, and there are things that you really should harvest now to get them at their primo. Black currants and red currants and cherries because they're coming ripe, strawberries because if you don't get them now, they're gone.
Right.
And herbs, because this is when, especially here in the interior of BC where summer can get so hot, this is when your herbs are often.
Before we jump into herbs, you mentioned red currants. And what does one do with red currants?
Very good. Well, my mother made fabulous red currant jelly.
Okay, so that's like cooking them up and putting them through a strainer?
Yeah. She cooked them up and put them through a jelly bag, added sugar, and boiled them until they set. But, you know, currants can be dried and used much like raisins. Have you ever gone into currant buns?
Yeah, that sounds like a nice, straight, easy way to do it.
Yeah, fry them.
I don't eat much jam or jellies or whatever, so that might be a nice idea. You can put them into salads and all sorts of things.
Yes, and when we get to the jam and jelly end of the universe, I'm going to be sharing some absolutely wonderful ways of making jams and jellies that do not take a lot of sugar.
Right. Please, 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 yes.
Yes, because that is the bugbear. All of the recipes for pectin, you know, the artificial pectin that came out during the 20s and 30s. And this is a little side note, by the way. Anne Frank's father was partner in a company that made and sold artificial pectin for jam and jelly making. And yet, the young woman who kept them hidden and actually retrieved their belongings and reunited with him, as he was the only survivor of the family, was hired by the company to test recipes and troubleshoot the using of this brand new product on the market, artificial pectin.
Wow.
With the artificial pectin, you're ending up, usually the recipes will be 8 cups sugar or 8 cups syrup, fruit syrup, 9 cups sugar, box of pectin. And it's like, what? I've got more sugar than juice. And, you know, this was the beginning of the, you know, better living through chemistry that we were buying into during the middle of the 20th century. So when we get, yeah, when we get to that end of the harvest year, we'll be talking about that. Herbs are much easier because, to be quite honest, just dry them.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, just dry them. There'll be a few little.
Sun, right? Not in the sun.
Yeah, not in the sun. No, do them in a dryer, do them in a brown paper bag or even a white paper bag or a blue paper bag if you have such a thing. But paper bags are fabulous. They keep the dirt out, they keep the light out, they keep the airflow good, but to a minimal, and they, you know, you can move them into a cooler area. And they're going to contain everything for you. You're not going to get a lot of wastage, and you're going to find the seeds are easy to collect if you've used a paper bag.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, so we're going to run through. We've got a lovely chart that we're going to be making available to people taking the gardening course, and it goes over some of the herbs. It's lovely and visual, and it gives you a ton of suggestions around your herbs. Now, when you join up with the garden circle, you've already got the companion planting guide, and on the flip side of that is the herb companions. So we've got a chart that will tell you all sorts of wonderful things about what to grow your herbs with and what they go well with in the garden. And then now we've got this other really lovely one that tells you what to do with it when you bring them into the kitchen.
Right.
Okay, so we're gonna, because we're at harvest, we're gonna focus on what you do when you bring them into the kitchen.
So should I hold up until they get a sense of what we're talking about, the chart?
Yeah.
Sure. So this is the chart we're talking about. Whoops. And which will be available for you. Lots and lots of information. I don't know if you can see that. Pull it back so you can see all of it.
Yeah. And so because it's a nice little grid chart, you know, you're going to have the herbs across the top and then a variety of things to use them with down the side. Yeah. It's great for working out little grids and figuring things out. So we're going to start right at the very beginning of the alphabet here with basil. Now, I'm currently growing 2 types of basil. We do have a lot of different types of basil in our seed collection, but I found that the 2 most popular are the lettuce leaf basil, which is virtually identical in flavor to your sweet Genovese, but it's a very large leaf basil, which is just divine for pestos. Like, it gives you so much basil to work with. Now, if you're a pesto fan, do freeze some of your basil fresh, okay? And it freezes best if you encase it in water. So get a jar, fill it about half full with basil, or a straight-sided plastic container, something that it's quite easy for it to roll out of when you're done. And fill it about half up with basil, cover it to about the 2/3, no more than 3/4 mark with water, and freeze it. And this will retain the basil to the point of almost completely the same as fresh. And so when you take it out, you slide the entire thing out, let the ice melt away, and process your basil for your pesto. Um, Other than that, your basil should be dried. You want to quick dry your basil if you can to retain all of the color. So basil's one of the few that actually does a bit better in a dehydrator than just hung up to dry. It retains a lot more of its color. Now, anytime we're talking about a herb that benefits from drying, I want you to realize there's a nice little trick that you can do with an oven or a toaster oven to dry these herbs quickly. Turn your oven or your toaster oven up to 250 degrees Fahrenheit and let it get to that. Like let the light go off, let it actually achieve that temperature. Turn it off at that point and put your herbs in. The temperature will drop rapidly enough that your herbs will not cook, they won't scorch, they won't brown in that heat, but they will dry very quickly and you will preserve the color of them. And so any of you who don't have a dehydrator, that's a real quick little fix. Basil, I tend to cut the stalks, like just cut them down fairly far down on the plant so that new growth can come up. And I cut about once a week, starting about this time of year. And then I take leaves off of the stalks. Sometimes I dry them on the stalk, but often I find that I get a nicer product if I strip the leaves off of the stalk to dry.
I guess you can also, I know my Sarah used to do ice cubes, right? So that,
Yeah. Same thing as freezing them in water. Yep, you got it.
Yeah.
And now basil's an annual, okay? So, and in our neck of the woods, basil doesn't even reseed itself well. So make sure that you leave some of your basil to go to stalks to fully flower, fully lose their blossoms, and gather those stalk ends so that you have seeds as well. Okay, so yes, harvest your basil by cutting whole stalks if you like, but make sure you leave some of those stalks to indeed go to seed. And so basil's easy peasy. So the purple ruffles basil, which is really quite difficult to get to keep its color, I found that I've replaced that in my garden with our red Reuben basil. And I like it. It's very ruffly, it's very, fine leaved. It gives a really lovely appearance as a trim or as a garnish, and it retains its color far better than the purple ruffles did. So year after year after year, I'm getting a consistent red basil from my seeds. So now another really nice annual herb, but one that you don't have to worry about gathering the seeds or collecting the seeds at all. It will be all seeds. They will be everywhere. You will have it next year. You will be picking it. I'm talking about our old friend, dill.
Yes, dill.
Yeah. Now, I like to have two different types of dill. I just adore the Decat or the Delicata dill. It's a lower growing format of dill. It's not as big. It doesn't get as big a heads. It doesn't get that kind of reddish tinge to it that, I find from the big Russian mammoth dill, which, by the way, for the most part here in BC, we have the Doukhobor immigrants to thank for that beautiful, thriving, vigorous mammoth dill that just took off here like it was born to grow in BC. They brought tons of it with them. It acclimatized really well. it'll naturalize, it'll go wild on you, given a little bit of encouragement in the right environment. So this time of year, my delicata and my Decat dill, these lovely ferny leaf dills, they're beautiful right now. They haven't started to set seed heads. They haven't started to do anything but be that lovely, soft, ferny foliage. And harvest as much of this as you can. It is just lovely. Now, dill is another one that I freeze a little bit of. I have a couple of potato soup recipes that the dried dehydrated dill just doesn't do it. I can use 4 or 5 times as much and I cannot get that right flavor.
Okay.
So, as a bow to the Hungarian potato soup out of the Moosewood cookbook, I freeze.
Cookbook.
Yeah, no kidding, huh?
Yeah.
And, I freeze some dill for that soup without fail. But dill will keep right on growing. It will keep right on kicking out. You can harvest it and use it for making your pickles and use it in pickling right up to fall. You can use the stalks, you can use the stems, you can use the leaves, you can use the seed head. It really doesn't matter. It all tastes like dill. And gathering dill seed is easy peasy. Oh my goodness. If you've ever grown dill, you know this. You go out in the late summer and fall, and what look like flower heads are actually just thousands upon thousands upon thousands of dill seeds. Dill is of the same family as the cow parsnip, the parsnip, and the yarrow plant. So they're called umbellafre, and that means they make an umbrella-looking kind of thing. And yarrow is Achillea millifolia, and millifolia means thousands of flowers. Well, dill is also a millifolia. It also means thousands of flowers. And when you see the seed head of a dill, you get that. Like there are hundreds on each and every one. Now,
where do we find yarrow? I don't see as much yarrow around here. Maybe a Deep Creek area, or I don't see much yarrow in the Shuswap. Am I missing something?
Well, it does get squeezed out by melilot or your sweet clover, which smells divine. Chicory, there's a lot of aggressive stuff that will squeeze it out. But you've got a lovely pinky red yarrow in your backyard that I am going to help myself to some of this fall.
You better introduce me to it.
Yeah, I will. It's right where we put the new bed. It runs from the top of that new bed almost all the way down to the fence.
Oh, wonderful. Okay, great.
Yeah, and it's lovely. So, dill, much like yarrow, gets that lovely big seed head, and left to its own devices, yarrow, or dill rather, will die in the fall, but those seeds, it will reseed itself. And once you've planted dill in a garden, you run the risk of having dill in that garden for a very long time. Okay, now marjoram. Sometimes called mother of oregano. Very closely related to oregano, not usually as intense in taste, although gather the marjoram blossoms and dry them. They are, without a doubt, the most divine part of the entire plant. Now, the problem with both marjoram and oregano blossoms is you're going to have to fight the butterflies for them because they will be completely covered in butterflies. So make sure you leave lots behind for our little insect buddies. They thrive on it. Left alone, marjoram will spread and spread spread and spread. Yeah, and it smells wonderful. If it encroaches on your lawn, mow it. It smells lovely.
Yeah, part of our lawn is that way.
Yeah, yeah, and
So,
give it lots of room to grow. It's a perennial. It'll come back year after year after year. Super easy to harvest. I just simply go out and chop stalks
right.
and put them in a brown paper bag. Once they're done, I just simply hold the stalk between two fingers and pull. A colander works incredibly well too. A plastic colander, you know, the kind with the sort of square slats.
Yeah.
If you put the stem through the square slat and pull, you'll strip almost all the vegetation off of it, quick, easy, and now it's all nicely contained in the colander. So, like, how easy is that? Yeah. Marjoram is
Are we going to do a show on this, or did I miss the fact that you've done some of the show on?
No, we'll be doing this probably this week. We did the herb tea show last week. We harvested and made sun tea, and this week we'll be doing other herbs.
Okay, great.
The culinary herbs this
By the
week.
way, those teas are just delicious.
Aren't they divine? Yeah. Yeah, the one where we just gathered what was offering itself in the garden, the poppy petals, the rose petals, the clover blossoms, that kind of serendipitous mix to me is always the best.
All right.
Never duplicated, but always the best.
And just to recap that for those that missed it, you're leaving it in the sun for what, the full day?
Yeah. Yeah, you want to give it about 8 hours.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So marjoram is a perennial, and it takes, it grows for a really long time. It gets really big. It survives almost everything. Give it room. And if it starts outgrowing the room, dig out in the center and, share with your friends and relatives. But you could ultimately plant an entire bed of marjoram. It would be just that easy to grow. Okay.
Yeah, it takes over everything.
Absolutely. And now that brings us to mint.
Well, there's another one that takes over everything.
Oh, and there are so many kinds of mint. Now, in your little herb circle up at the front of the house there, we found spearmint and we found peppermint. Okay, and then down in the bottom of your garden, you've got the chocolate mint that we planted. So, mint comes in all these various subtleties. But this time of year, it's starting to bloom. Please gather some of those blossoms. They smell wonderful. And if you gather them, well, some of them are still young and lush, and some are kind of burning out, you'll get seeds as well. But mint flower just makes the most lovely divine tea. Mint can be used right away in certain things. Mint sauce for your lambs, mint vinegar for your lamb. You do that with fresh mint leaves, and you get a whole different intensity than if you dry the mint. So you have to be careful to strip them off of the stalk so that you don't get too much moisture in your vinegar. But really, that's what mint sauce is it's mint and apple cider vinegar with just a tiny touch of Worcester sauce. Yeah. So, dry your mint. I don't usually bother to freeze mint, but I got to tell you, if you like mint juleps, freeze some mint, okay? And there is an incredibly intense mint developed now called the mojito mint, and it is fabulous for mojitos and for mint julep. It just is so intense. No, and mint is a perennial, okay? Give it lots of room. If you're planting 3 or 4 different varieties, do give them some space. I had one young man years ago send away for 4 12 packs of mint. So he got 4 different types of mint, a dozen of each type.
Oh, my goodness.
And he did a 4-bed, a circle that he cut into 4 quarters. And he put the orange mint here and the apple mint here and the ginger mint here and the chocolate mint here. And in about 2 years' time, he just had a mixed mint patch. And so, you know, if you want those different subtleties, keep them separate. Okay, I like that we've got
them in the containers. You know, not going to work either. The seeds drop outside of the container and take over.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
What the solution is to.
It doesn't encroach well on yards, on lawn. So growing it surrounded by lawn does seem to work best. Now, it's very easy to tell peppermint from spearmint because spearmint's all soft and fuzzy and broadleaf, and peppermint is shiny and sharp and glossy. And so your 2 in the front bed are never going to get mixed up. They're kind of on opposite sides of the circle anyway. But I'm glad your chocolate mint is elsewhere. Yeah, but yeah, harvest mint. Now, oregano. Plant oregano.
Yeah, there's something about oregano and sort of as a bachelor type cook. I always go to oregano. There's something so fundamental about
it. With everything. I mean, when I finally confessed up to people that the real secret to the lentil burgers and the empanadas that they thought were filled with meat was the oregano, I had a hard time convincing them that it was the oregano. It's almost always the oregano.
Really?
Health-wise, it's fabulous. It has so many health-giving properties. There's a reason we call it Joy of the Mountain. You know,
what a nice name.
Yeah, it is a fabulous plant. Bees and butterflies go ape for it. In the not too far from here, at the top of Balmoral Hill, accessible from Hendrickson Road and Paris Road, is a old defunct hippie commune. And the remnant of it that is most obvious to all when they stumble across it is what had been the orchard. Now, most of the trees are in terrible disrepair because the bear have been harvesting them for 20 years. So they're plum and they're apple and they're a whole broad range of things, but the bears, for the most part, of broken branches, broken down trees, and there's even a peach tree up in there.
Oh, peach tree.
But the oregano that was planted 40 years ago has become a sea of oregano. And 20 years ago, my daughter and I stayed in a cabin above it and would go down every day, and we named it the Butterfly Meadow. We counted 63 different types of butterflies one summer in the meadow. Pollinators cannot get enough oregano, despite the heat that our summer pours it on. The oregano keeps blooming, keeps blooming, keeps blooming. If you've got a part of your garden that you can allow to go a little bit wild and become overrun with something, choose oregano.
I think we have it by the greenhouse, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
I may be wrong, and it's a nice, steady, fairly tall plant.
All summer long. Oh, yeah. It's there all the time.
Always looking healthy and full-bodied.
Yeah, and you can harvest it right now. And you know, you can make your own oregano tincture. Now, It won't be as potent as the oil of oregano essential oil that you buy, but it will still be amazingly potent and can be just such a boon in cold and flu season. So I can't say it often enough or loud enough. Plant oregano, plant it. Let it grow wild. Plant it in 2 or 3 places. It's really so good for the garden and so good for the globe. Plus, it tastes good on everything. And put oregano on it. Even your vegan friends will,
Right. It can be on meats. It can be on
you
steamed
can serve
vegetables.
vegetarian food to a carnivore if you've just got oregano on it. I know, I've done it.
Eggs is good on everything. It's on good on cheese sandwiches. It's good everywhere.
It is. It's fabulous. Now, another absolute perennial, and it's no wonder we wound it into a song, parsley.
Yes. Parsley, rosemary, and thyme.
Yes. And so parsley is a water lover. But once you get it established, it will go and go and go. If you live in a really dry climate, a place where it's really, really, really hard to keep things wet, put your parsley either in a pot or in a little flower bed right beside your hose tap, okay? So every time you're watering anything, you can give it a cup here and there of water. It'll catch a few drips from the tap. It'll plant it near a downspout, from your house. Plant it someplace where it's going to get a lot of kind of naturally occurring water.
Great idea.
Yeah, it loves the water. But parsley is another one that it just goes with so many, many, many things. Now, parsley's a perennial. It'll come back year after year after year. And often it's one of the very first things that you can harvest out of the garden. And to me, it just tastes like springtime. But parsley is also another one of those herbs that really should be flash dried. Do it in that 250-degree oven that you've turned off, or do it in a dehydrator. If you put parsley in a paper bag or try and dry it any other way, it goes yellow. It kind of tastes like hay, but more than anything else, it just goes yellow. And I mean, I have recipes for like my green rice recipe. It is a casserole of cooked rice and egg and seasonings, but it calls for a half a cup of dried parsley. And when it's served, it's this lovely, lovely green that has just gone through. Well, if your parsley's yellow, it doesn't do that. As a matter of fact, it turns it into one of the least attractive colors I've ever seen in a food. My kids referred to it as the gray-green casserole or cream of creature. So
parsley would be good, like Andrea said, like a water spout or any hose that drips or anything like that, right?
Yeah.
I like that idea.
Yeah. I learned that from my prairie dwelling mother-in-law, who, managed, despite droughts and hailstorms and everything else, she managed to keep this pot of parsley going all summer long, and it was divine. It was a flower pot, and it adds to so much. Like it
pot is better. I mean, than just putting it right in the ground, or doesn't matter, I guess.
Well, I think it does well.
They dig in, right? They put it in. Yeah.
Yeah, she put her pot of it in the root cellar and brought it out in the spring. But like I said, she was pressed for water, and her garden was more a mini farm, which was rototilled, and that doesn't bode well for herbs. They need their own little kind of spot, their own little herb garden. So, of course, if we're going to talk parsley and sage, we're going to be doing, you know, rosemary and thyme as well. And rosemary comes after parsley.
Mhm.
Now, rosemary has, well, a lot of plants do. I did an article a while back on the Victorian language of plants, where you could send a bouquet to somebody and it was a whole message in a handful of flowers and plants. And rosemary is for remembrance. So rosemary was often included in funeral wreaths. And traditionally, you know, funeral wreaths really were to help us combat the smell. You know, they really were to preserve the body and to preserve, you know, to prevent too much odors going on betwixt the time the person passed and when we were able to get them in the ground prior to embalming and, you know, refrigeration and that. So the pungent smell of rosemary, you know, it's a very heavy smell. As an aromatherapist, I would refer to it as a base note. You know, you put it down and then you can add other things on top of it. So rosemary was often included in funeral wreaths, but it was also included in memorial celebration wreaths, and frequently sent across distance to people.
You mean where it would arrive with a bow on it or something?
Yeah, you know, or somebody would send you a letter, and in the letter would be a sprig of rosemary, you know,
Right. Okay. Yeah.
along with a forget-me-not flower, perhaps, you
Yeah.
know, and so. Yeah, rosemary is for remembrance, but rosemary is very pungent. There's two ways to use rosemary. So subtly that you put it in the oil, heated the oil up, and taken it out again. Okay, you are either that subtle with rosemary, or you completely inundate something with rosemary, like you do rosemary chicken, where you literally layer a whole layer of rosemary over the chicken breast, cook it, and then take the rosemary away. Rosemary was often left in its like sprig format, even for cooking, so it could be easily removed. It's a coarse herb. It's kind of like trying to eat a dried pine needle. You could sew with it, you know, so it dries beautifully and it keeps for a very long time once it's been dried. But rosemary is one of those things that we like the flavor of more than we like the texture and the actual consuming of the entire thing. Yeah, yeah. And sage. Well, Benjamin Franklin was known to have said, "Why would a man be ill when there is sage in his garden?" And sage is just that much of a universal healer. It truly is. You can make a poultice with sage leaves that will pull poisons and toxins out of the body. You can make a face mask with sage leaves to relieve toothache pain or an abscess tooth. You can make sage tea to settle the tummy. You can cook with it. It's in most of the herbal cough syrups and teas. One of the best herbal cough tea formulas I have has quite a bit of sage and thyme in it. Sage soothes the throat. It calms the whole nerve system. So sage is well worth growing. Now, sage is a perennial, so if you planted it this year, it may just now be starting to blossom and could be giving you blossoms. And by the way, sage blossoms are in a world all into and of themselves. They have a slight, yeah, they have a slight burpy taste to or scent to them. It's quite remarkable. But sage, again, gather and dry those leaves. Gather them over and over and over again. Sage will keep growing and producing, but the leaves are so much better when they're small and tender. It's a perennial. It's going to come back for you over and over and over again. I have a couple of types of sage because I think they're pretty and I like them. Purple sage doesn't taste much different than common sage, but it looks kind of nice in the garden, and put it as garnish on a salad. It's really quite lovely. Sage and a lot of these other ones do really, really well in herbal vinegars. And herbal vinegars are remarkably easy to make. All you need is a bottle, apple cider vinegar, and then choose which herbs you're going to put into that vinegar and allow to infuse. It takes a couple of weeks to get a really good flavor. And in my opinion, it takes a full year to get a fantastic.
Do you leave them in the sun or you leave them in the cupboard? Or
no, I put them in the cupboard.
Yeah. Well, Sarah, we're at the top of the hour and we got a few more herbs to go.
So well, we better get moving.
We just maybe need to add another herbal part of the show next time.
We could. I do want to kind of just
wrap it up, okay?
Really quickly. So savory, again, a lovely herb. Annual, summer savory is an annual, so you'll have to replant it and replant it. But dwarf winter savory is a perennial, and it tastes slightly stronger than the summer savory. But, and it comes back over and over again. Now, if you're lucky, French tarragon is a perennial. It's a tender perennial. And the thing to keep in mind with French tarragon is you cannot grow it from seed. You got to buy a plant. It's a clone, okay? And last but not least is thyme, which is a lovely, lovely creeping plant. I really encourage people to grow thyme. Not only is it a good cooking herb, thyme in cough syrups is wonderful because thyme is a natural cough suppressant, and it will suppress when your cough kind of gets stuck and you're coughing more out of it being stuck than a true need for a productive cough. Thyme can really help you with that. But going through that quickly, Tyson, has convinced me that we actually do need another entire herb thing, and we'll do that next week, and we will touch on, the 10 or so that aren't even on this list.
Well, it sounds great to me. I think this is really important. Everybody needs to know about herbs, and it's not an easy, straightforward thing. There's so many things to learn about herbs and how to use them, how to take care of them, and how to dry them, or all the different ways that we process them, right? So
yes, and I am committed to people being able to grow their own food and medicine. And without the herbal knowledge, it's kind of hard to do the medicine part.
Oh, that's true too, and we haven't even touched that, right?
Yeah, but these are just the culinary herbs. So, yeah. All right. Well, what a great hour. We went through it before we got through the time before we got through the information.
Well, thank you everybody for showing up, and as you can see, there's so much to share, and we have so much fun sharing together, and I get to learn so much. It gets me excited to get out in my garden, discover all the things I don't know about, and even how to process and take care of things that I have had here in the garden since my Sarah started it. So there's so much to learn, so much to share. So see you next week, same time, same place. Come and visit the garden if you're in the neighborhood, right?
Yeah, come and learn more about herbs. We got lots more to cover.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
See you next week.